Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Bowhunter Chronicles podcast brought to you by Tactacam. Tactacam is by far the easiest way to begin filming your hunts. Whether it's the 4K 5.0 or the budget-friendly Solo, Tactacam has something for everyone. Check them out at tactacam.com. This year we're also working with Spartan Forge. Spartan Forge is machine learning for the deer woods. Basically, Spartan Forge takes collared deer studies, insurance car deer accident information, social media geolocations, and it couples that with weather, moon phase, and rut activity to tell you when or when not to be in the woods. This currently has an online interface at spartanforge.ai, but the app is currently being built and set to launch late summer. Once the app goes live, you can expect there to be a price increase, but if you use code BOWHUNTER, you can save 25%, and that will stick with you as long as you use the Spartan Forge services. So head on over to spartanforge.ai and get your free 14-day trial. So if you follow along with our podcast, you know we're not shy about sharing our hardships and failures. Today's social media world, this is kind of an anomaly. I mean, everybody shoots 140s every year on public land from a saddle with a kayak, right? Well, maybe not. This week we're talking to Jason Redd of Timber Ninja Outdoors on hunting in general. Failures, hardships. We talk about method of take and why we choose some hunts over some others, why we choose to hunt the way that we do, and a little bit of what hunting means to us. Jason has some great insight on hunting. I talk to him quite often, and I'm sure you're going to love this one. This is kind of like maybe like a little bit of a look inside some of our conversations that we have here and there. I know you guys are going to like this one. Jason is like the furthest thing from your typical business owner, and we basically don't talk about any of his products other than to say that he's got a saddle coming out here, amongst the other things, the carbon fiber tree stand and platform that they're working on. But it's really just about kind of hunting and the difficulties that we all face. I'm sure you guys are going to like that. But before we get to the episode, I got to tell you a little bit about what's going on from the Patreon side. So Patreon is a crowdfunding for creators that allows you as a listener to help out with operating costs, like the new editing program that I use to edit this episode. So leave us a review. Tell us if you noticed anything. Hit us up on Instagram if you like the way that this one came out, or if not, use the different program and would really like some feedback. But it's also helping fund. We are building a studio for a consistent, improved recording environment for the show. And you can help out with like as little as 17 cents a day. I mean, you'd literally walk past that in the parking lot of the hunting area if you saw it there, but it really does help us out. But also through some of that Patreon money, through our partners, we do some great giveaways through, every quarter. So this quarter, we're giving away a Tactacam fisheye package, a Hunting Beast tree stand. We work with Basemap. Basemap is great. You can use code Chronicles to save 20%. It's $30 for the entire year. Using our code, it ends up being $24 for the entire year. That's $2 a month. Incredibly powerful. They have a new improved interface that's coming out. The screenshots of it are tremendous. We're going to have Ed here on the podcast here very soon to go through all that stuff, but they give away a year membership as well as a swag pack with a shirt and hat and all of that. Spartan Forge, as you heard in the intro, Spartan Forge, their app is right on the cusp of coming out, and they're giving away a subscription to that. Zinger fletchings, 3D printed, compression fit fletchings, super easy to use, super great. They're going to be what I'm using at the Total Archery Challenge. And now we also have access to the Vitals Live, the live and recorded webinars. And that's right, guys, for you guys that are already Patreons that have been asking, how do we get to the archived information? I've got all that login information, so to shoot me a message, I'll get that out to you. I'll send it out on the Patreon, so you'll have access to the entire previous year of all the videos, all the webinars, Dan Infalt, Johnny Eberhart, Andy May, Zach Fehrenbaugh, Greg Litzinger, the list goes on. Just some great information. But in those live webinars, you can actually ask questions to the experts in real time. So for all the podcasts that you listen to, you'll also get to, now you're the host in somewhat. You get to ask me. I ask the questions in real time about your properties, all that. Great thing, but that's offered through Patreon as well. And if you're interested in that, if you want to help out the show, you can check that out at patreon.com/Bowhunter Chronicles podcast. You can click our link on Instagram. You can go to bowhunterchroniclespodcast.com and click the link for Patreon. But any of those places, Instagram, are on our website. Also click to get entered to win our Bowtech 2021 Bowtech Carbon Zion. We're giving that away. HHA has given us the Tetra single pin sight and a Virtus rest. It's a great setup. I just set my bow up with almost identical setup, and it is shooting lights out. Super excited. You don't have to be a Patreon for that one. That's just from us to you. We're a bow hunting podcast. We haven't given away a bow. It's something, kind of, if you don't have a bow, you can't really go bow hunting. So it's kind of like that's the barrier of entry. So we wanted to give back, and I'm just in love with this platform, the Bowtech Carbon bows. Incredible value. It's awesome. We came out of pocket for that with our friends over at Johnson's Great Outdoors. They hooked us up with a little bit better pricing. Mitch is great up there. If you're in the area, check them out. But you can sign up for that, and you've got till June 10th to get signed up for that. We're going to give that away right as soon as we get back from the Total Archery Challenge. We are doing our cookout at the Total Archery Challenge. We'll be up there through Thursday through Sunday, right behind the practice range, as we always are. We're in the condo above where we normally are, but you'll be able to see the banners and all this stuff. So stop by, say hi. We're doing a cookout on Friday night instead of Saturday, because shooting the day that you have to go home extremely hungover is not any fun at all. So we're going to do it on Friday, so we don't have to do it on Sunday, all the cleanup and everything like that. So check us out. Shoot me a message on Instagram. If you guys are going to be at the Total Archery Challenge up at Boyne Mountain, please stop by. Like I said, hit us up on Instagram, Facebook, whatever. We'd love to see you, hang out, have a beer, eat some food. It's going to be fun. No podcast next week because it's the holiday weekend, and we're getting into summer. We got a lot of big stuff coming up, so we are going to take 1 week break. Sorry about that. Catch up on the old episodes, and we'll be back with you here soon. Thank you for listening. Enjoy the episode. Hey everybody, Adam and John back with another episode of the Bowhunter Chronicles podcast, and we are talking to what I would consider a good friend. I talk to Jason quite often here. Jason Redd, the Timber Ninja, the Carbon Fiber King, safety guru. But we're going to talk about something that, maybe is more near and dear to us, or maybe more frequent than we like to talk about. Maybe a little bit of failure today. How's that sound, Jason?
Yeah, we can talk about failures all day. We all have them. If you're trying hard, you're always going to fail. That's the key.
Well, we were just kind of talking about it before we got on here. If you're on social media, you don't ever see any failure. These guys with these big giant Instagram pages and YouTube and all that stuff, rarely do you ever see them post their hardships. Now, how is that possible, do you suppose?
It's a good question. I think, maybe some people get to go on like canned hunts and get multiple opportunities, but I think in the real world, most of us that are hunting public land and, trying to make things a little more complicated, we have a lot more failures than we have success. I mean, things just happen, if you look at hunting, we're just chasing a creature that spends its whole life trying to survive in a natural environment. So they're really good at what they doing that. You think about it, they do that every day, 100%, 24 hours, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. We do this as a hobby. So like they should be better at it than us, but some people get lucky, or they maybe go on canned hunts, or have areas that these animals don't have to do that. I don't know, or maybe they're just good. Who knows?
Well, last time we talked a little bit about like your hunting history and kind of what you were all about. And so tell us about the area that you're hunting in, like average success rates and the kind of where you're hunting there in North Carolina.
Where I live in Western North Carolina, and we have a pretty low deer density. It's mountain terrain, so it's really rough. You know, the as far as harvest records go, there every year is like 0.4 bucks killed per square mile. So, that's not a lot of animals. And, a lot of places I hunt, if I target mature, and I've talked about this before on some other podcasts, is I feel like it's almost easier to target mature animals because they're easier to seek out rather than just overall animals, because it's almost like a balancing act. I mean, they are about the same, like most of the areas I'm targeting mature bucks in, or a buck that I find that I'm hunting, I don't really see many deer that whole year while I'm trying to harvest that animal. I mainly am focused on that animal, and I don't see many other deer because we don't have a lot of them. But I get fortunate enough, every year to at least lay eyes on them and get that opportunity. But I don't always accomplish the goal. So just one thing or another, it just happens. Miss, or wind changes, something. They take a different trail. There's a list of things that can go wrong.
So what do you mean when you say that it's easier to target a mature animal versus just hunting deer? Or I guess maybe like expound on that. Like, what's the difference?
I don't know. I guess for a person starting out hunting, I wouldn't say, maybe that's a wrong way of putting it. It's not easier, but as I've spent time in the woods and been able to identify mature animal habitat where mature animals live and find mature animals, it's like I could have just as hard of a time trying to kill a doe in some of these areas because we don't have that many deer. But I've gotten decent at being able to find mature animals, so I can go find them and not even look for the other deer. I just go look for the mature ones, because essentially, the ratio is about the same for number of deer. I'm not saying there's 5 mature bucks or 5 does, but I have a good opportunity of finding the mature deer and then just focusing on them rather than trying to whack a doe. I mean, it's just they're not that far off, I guess is a better way of putting it, as far as ratio goes. No. And that's in the national forest. This isn't talking private, land around here. I mean, the ratio is a little bit better. The buck ratio I was telling you about earlier, the 0.4 bucks per square mile, is in the national forest.
And what's the hunting pressure like? Do you see a lot of other guys out there hunting on this?
Not in the places that I hunt, and that's the thing I key in on. Is I would much rather, and this I look at this anywhere I go in the Appalachian Range. I mean, I hunt a lot of different states in the Appalachian Range, and I would much rather go to places that there's going to be less people, and a lot of times less animals. But I feel like my success rate goes up if I can, don't have anybody else booking my hunt. So where I hunt up here, I rarely see anybody in the national forest. So like the further you go away from Asheville, which is where I live, and the deeper up in the mountains, the less people, you're going to run into.
Yeah. So that's kind of like our elk hunt, like the elk hunt Adam and I went on. We didn't see another hunter. There wasn't a whole lot of elk, but when we got into them, they weren't messed with, And then on the other hand, like when I went to Montana last year, it was just, that's all we seen with other hunters. Yeah, we seen a lot of elk, but they were so spooky, you could hardly call to them anything. It was just like,
Yeah.
and that was my point. Like, after talking, I'm like, I would rather go to an area with less elk and less people, than go to a place where there are a ton of elk, but there's a ton of people screwing it up. It's like, to me, the opportunity is better in the low density.
I agree, man. Like even where I elk hunt in Colorado, it used to be that way, but nowadays we're getting a lot of people. But that's another reason we choose when we go elk hunting. We go earlier in the year because most people are trying to chase the peak of the rut when they're screaming. But I like to go early because there's less people, and if you play, just some years it's off and on. Some years it's way better, and they're starting to really pick up and get vocal early. But another thing I find when you hunt them early out there is that they have a tendency to stay in their area. You can find them on their bed, and they'll still bugle. It's kind of like a turkey. They'll still bugle in the mornings and stuff, and you can locate where they're at. And they're getting a little worked up. So if you work in there and you start doing some bugles, and getting up in their bed, they're going to get really pissed off. I like that. But nowadays, like we were in a unit, the unit we mainly hunt is very low success rate out there, but it used to have way less people, but now it's getting wild, man. And that's the thing. I mean, that's another reason. Like, I mean, I love hunting to seek adventure. It's like my number one priority, and that's why I like hunting mountain whitetails, and that's why I like hunting out west. Is because I can go on adventure hunts and get away from people. But it's becoming extremely hard to get away from people, even out west. No matter where you go, like there's only a few places I would say anymore out west that you could probably go and not really see anybody, and some of those areas are extremely remote areas or areas that have a really high density of like grizzly bears, because a lot of your weekend warriors don't want to deal with bears. But, I went to Alaska last year, and like Alaska is really the only place in North America that you can go anymore that you can completely get away from people. And I don't know. I'm keen on that. I'm like you. I would much rather.
We even tried that last year in Montana. Like the first place we hunted was like up by the Montana-Idaho border, not really grizzly country, but there was just a ton of people. And we're like, okay, we're going to grizzly country. Maybe there'll be less people there. And matter of fact, there was like right where we were hunting, there was like 2 guys attacked last year. And I mean, and we get there and we seen just as many, if not more people. There's guys out there in like little one-man tents out just, camping, and I'm like, holy shit, these guys either don't know what the hell's going on. Like, we pulled into this little park, and the very first thing you see in the sign when you pull in to this little State Forest campground was welcome to bear country, and there's a big picture of a grizzly.
Oh wow, yeah.
And I'm like, man, I might want to sleep in my truck,
Yeah,
but
man, those things make you eerie.
But yeah, there was a lot of guys out there. But
yeah, it's getting. I mean, on one hand, you want to say it's getting worse, but on the other hand, from a hunter number perspective, you want to say, all right, this is cool that more people are out there, right? Because I mean, we need more numbers of people hunting to keep this thing going, because there's a lot of anti-hunters that want to shut it down. So it's always very complicated, like,
right.
And I've heard some pretty, people get some stink about that, that are big known folks out west and not liking all the pressure, but we kind of got to have it to keep the whole thing alive at the end of the day. We're trying to bring in more hunters because, I mean, I think pre-COVID, we've been on a 10-year slide, but like the numbers that we picked up during COVID, from what I've been reading, is that we're as good as they were like 8 or 10 years ago or something like that, just like far as growth numbers.
Right. I mean, yeah, like my group for Montana this year, we put in with our 5-man party, and we didn't draw a tag for our general elk. So like, that's pretty rough.
Oh yeah.
But
yeah.
I'm still going.
States.
I'm still heading out there to elk hunt. I mean, I'm not going to hunt. Obviously, I don't have a tag, but my buddy lives in Montana, so as a resident, he gets his tag. So
Oh,
I'm
cool.
going to go out there for 2 weeks and just call and video and, learn some new terrain for the next opportunity I get to go out. So
Yeah. Yeah. I'll be going to Colorado again this year, and we'll see. Maybe a rodeo, but maybe people are back to work. I don't know. Um, it doesn't seem like it. There's so many people looking for people to employ right now, and they're not. So it may be another shit show again this year.
So how do you feel like about the things that we do, right? So do you? I know that we need to get more hunters in. We need more hunter recruitment and everything. But it seems like the more that podcasts like ours talk about, like, yeah, go out and do this, or this is how we do it, and then they have guys on like Dan Infault and all the guys that are saying like these are all the tricks and secrets and everything. This is where you need to hunt, and we've seen it where you'd think that there would not be a guy anywhere. It's like this information is freely available now, where before it was like inside tricks or
it's pretty close to the cuff.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah. So how do you think about that? I mean, even in obviously that's definitely affecting, like you said, the guys out west. Is anything happening with that as far as like hunting in the mountains or hills or in the areas that you've hunted?
I mean, I don't think so much where I hunt. And I've talked to buddies that hunt in different states. Like, I mean, I have seen this year. I had a guy on camera, and I'm pretty sure it's a guy that I know who it was that's like messaged me a bunch. And like, like I've taken some pictures of some overlooks I probably shouldn't have. And there's a lot of people that are guilty of that stuff, especially in the early days of social media and hunting and, trying to build a fan base, like people taking pictures of mountain ranges or people taking, a video and showing their Onyx and people screenshotting the Onyx and knowing exactly your latitude and longitude. I mean, that it's crazy the extremes that some people go through, honestly. But I haven't really experienced it that much here. I mean, there is a huge peak of interest in, from a whitetail perspective on the East Coast of hunting mountain whitetails right now, because it is really cool. Like you can get that Western experience on the East Coast for a person that has never been out West or maybe doesn't have the time off or the budget to go out West. Like you can get a real cool backcountry experience on the East Coast. So I get a lot of messages about that. And I know my buddies that are kind of known that do a lot of mountain style hunting, they do as well. But, the thing is, and I've seen this with a lot of different hobbies and interests that I've had in the past, is people, and even I'm guilty of it myself. Like you see things and you watch videos, and you get really excited and stoked about it. And then you go out there and do it and you realize how damn hard it is. And you only do it once, you know what I mean? Or, you get overwhelmed the first time. You're like, man, I'm really over my head right now. I think, attrition will like kind of keep some of that stuff down, in the mountains. Cause like, when you talk about like a low density deer area in extremely rough terrain, and you have to put in a lot of time. I mean, because the key to success, and like we were talking about earlier, in my opinion, the people that are the most successful, and even like influencers you see in on social media and YouTube and stuff, the ones that are extremely successful are the people that have the most time in the woods and have the most persistence, right? And you have to be extremely persistent and have a lot of time in the woods out here to be consistently successful. So, I think, somebody say if they came to Western North Carolina God forbid, if they wanted to pick their rut trip to come out here and just hunt, like they could be really disappointed because you may go a week and not even see a deer. Right. I mean, and I mentor and recruit a lot of new hunters here. And the first thing I tell them is like, hey, don't get don't get discouraged when you don't see anything because it's just common up here. I mean, even sign, sometimes it's hard to show people sign unless I really take them into my spots that I've spent years finding to show them. You know what I mean? Like, so I don't think we're going to see it here, but there's other areas maybe in the Appalachian Range, I think, that have higher deer density that could potentially see a uptick. And I don't think it'd ever be as bad as out west.
So what do you think, I guess, what would you say is the issue with mountain hunting as a whole versus like hunting a hill country or, some of the big timber? Because, you talk to, or if you've listened to Dan Infalt, he says like, big woods is some of the most difficult timber, difficult terrain to hunt. But when you get into hill country, it's like, oh, they just, they always bed here and they move around these bowls. What separates mountain hunting from like hill country or like the big timber? Why is it just the deer density or what?
No, I mean, essentially the mountain country up here is big timber. And, I think a lot of the hill country and like, especially, I think, most people, I guess reference the hill country to Dan Infalt's stuff that he does, which is hill country leading into ag. So essentially where you have more ag, and even here in the mountains, like if you're closer to ag and private land, your deer density is going to be a little bit higher, but when you get into big timber, old growth national forest type tracts where they're not doing a lot of clear cuts and stuff like that and producing a lot of like premier whitetail habitat, the deer are just a little bit more scattered and concentrated. And you also have big tracts of land. But in my opinion, once you learn to hunt the mountains, like if you find the deer, they're not that hard to pattern. And because once you understand the terrain, and that terrain also translates over into hill country because, the deer are going to use, essentially the same type of terrain features. It's just like when you go from hill country to mountain country, just the topography is increased. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I mean, like hills are still laid out with, ridges and finger ridges. In the mountains, you have the same thing. It's just, they're intensified.
Okay. And so on your Facebook page, I don't know if it's just like Timber Ninja or what it is, but you have like kind of like a forum there where you're, it's not really focused on your products or gear. It's more about learning and kind of like a, I don't know,
not like a ninja.
Yeah, a sounding board, and it's really really good. The topics that you bring up are like well thought out. It's not just the same like, hey, what saddles everybody using, or like how do you one stick. But you were talking about so you've seen the other ones, I take it. But you'd been posting some pictures and some instances of like some setups where maybe it didn't work out or whatever, and kind of like, can you explain like some of the setups where you've got in on these deer and like how you figured it out, and then maybe why it didn't work out, and maybe some of the successes as well?
Yeah. Really how it doesn't work out also leads to success, in my opinion, of the way that I like to hunt. I mean, I primarily put most of my attention. So, my season's kind of split. Like I am fortunate that I do have a lot of time, maybe I don't get to show a bunch of kills, but whatever. I do have a lot of time to hunt and I get to hunt a lot of places. But like around home is where I spend most of my time, like capturing data, targeting specific animals. And then I have like this other side of me that loves going to different areas in the mountains in different states. And then I like going in blind with knowing nothing and trying to find an animal to kill, or a target animal during that time, and then I go in blind and try to make that happen. So it kind of works two different ways there, but like essentially the setup is ultimately going to be somewhat the same, except depending on the time of year I may tweak it a little bit. Like so I like at home I spend most of my time targeting animals that I have some history, based on trail cameras, target bucks, whatever. I like to focus on them early and late season because I do think your best opportunity to kill a mature animal, because that's mainly when I'm hunting whitetails, I really like to hunt mature animals. Like, I'm not that interested in trying to kill small deer unless I have a rifle in my hand. I'll shoot anything with a rifle, but with a bow, like it's really weird. Like with a bow, it's kind of like a work of art. And this sounds cliche or whatever, but when I have a bow, like it's like that's the thing I really want to put my focus on, and I want to like tailor it to specific animals. And so I put a lot of time at home in trying to find these animals, and I feel like my best opportunity to kill them is early or late season, and I'm primarily doing that close to their beds because I don't think animals are ever nocturnal, because like, a deer, it's almost like, they're like a cow, right? They have to get up and move around during the day. They can't stay sedentary all during daylight hours. They get up, move around out of their beds, feed a little bit, get some water, whatever, stretch their legs, switch beds based on wind, all these things. And so I'm not a big believer in animals going completely nocturnal. They may be nocturnal in areas where people have their trail cameras on the hot sign, but these deer are moving. So like, I like to target them in their beds. And so how I really like to hunt them, and I would say 80%, maybe 90% of the mature bucks that I've killed have all been killed coming out of their bed, and most of them been killed in the afternoons. And one of the things that I really put a lot of attention to, and this is what I was talking about that leads to success and failure, is I always hunt them on a wind that benefits them more than me. And I catch a crosswind. So, crosswind or cross thermals, because up here in the mountains, you can't really rely upon winds because we have so much different terrain features that cause wind to do crazy things. Like I can have a wind at my house that's doing one thing and have, different areas I look at on like Weather Underground or whatever close to where I hunt that says one thing, but I can get up there and it can be going a completely different area, or I can go between two ridges and the wind changes. So those deer aren't that, in my opinion, up in the higher mountains, they're not that focused on wind, but they are very thermal focused. And if they do get them both lined up, I feel like that's great for them. So what I always like to do is hunt them where those winds and thermals are benefiting them better than me. And majority of the bucks that I've killed, I know, and I'm getting better at this, and it's taken, years. I've been up here for 12 years, and I've been doing this for 12 years up here. And, I'm getting better at picking that trail that he's going to take to a degree. And then when I set up on it, I've got that wind and thermal benefiting him, but my thermals and wind are just cutting it enough to where I have a really small window of a shot opportunity. And I have a short time to capitalize on that. And if not, you get busted. And I mean, it happened to me this year. I got, it laid out perfect on a target buck I was hunting. And just so happened though, he came in, had a doe with him, and he was following the doe going back to his bed. Actually, this was a morning hunt actually. And, I was catching him coming back to his bed, but he had a doe with him, and, they were using the same trail, and she hit my thermals right before he stepped into the opening in these thick laurels, because I hunt really thick laurel thickets, and all he had to do was take one step, but she caught my thermals and blew, and he didn't know what was going on, but he just, obviously ran with her.
So when you're talking about getting in there and the winds being screwy, I like to know, like, how far are you going in? Because like when we talked to, and this was, I think whitetail and bear hunting, when we talked with Adrian Wilson, you guys can go back and listen to that podcast, but he's like, oh yeah, I'm in shape, I can hunt these hills, and then he's like, I don't want to go any farther. Like this is awful. So it sounds like, some of the places that you're hunting are still, just like anybody else, that wants to get in, wants to get away from people, are a long ways away. And so if you've got, the weather says the wind is here at your house, you're going to set up on a bed and you've got to walk, a ridiculous amount of time, elevation, all of that. And then the wind is different in thermals, like in a low deer density.
Well, the thermals are always going to be
thermals are going to be consistent.
Yeah.
Yes,
right.
They're going to be consistent.
Well, I was going to say the way that those work with, a wind or predominant wind, and like if you've listened to some of the guys like he's talking about, like Nathan Killen, when they talk about hunting like these bowls and the way that the wind works, and it's just pretty wild. So how are you planning on setting up on a bed in like an unpredictable wind scenario?
I'll check my wind as I go in, and I may have to change where I'm going to set up that morning. That's where being mobile is key. But the thermals are always going to be consistent. So, and I think the deer understand that as well, and they're going to bed based on those thermals more than the wind, if that makes sense.
Sure.
And I mean, honestly, one of the biggest benefits of hunting low density areas is that you can hunt an area multiple times without boogering it, because deer aren't really taking that trail that much. You know what I mean? And that's where we were talking about earlier, is the time in the stand, the persistence is what really makes it happen. It's not like, there's very few times I say I'm going out here today and I'm going to kill that deer, right? Like, I just know that he's in the area and using it. And I know with enough time that if I focus on him, that he's going to take that trail or one of the other trails that I have dialed in at some point. You know what I mean? So it's a gamble at that, to that degree. But, when you don't have that many deer, like if you go in these areas that are higher deer density, and I'm sure anybody that's, is when they were greener hunting, you find this area, you saw a lot of deer the first day you got there, and you kept hunting. Every day the deer numbers go down, right? I mean, have y'all ever noticed that?
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. We don't really have that problem up here because we don't have that many deer. So like they don't, you're not going to be alerting the other animals as much. And, like I do believe that, deer do put out some type of scent or something when they get spooked or weary that other deer pick up on. And, I'm not a biologist, but I've seen deer get spooked and see another deer walk to that same area and become alert, even when they didn't see that deer. And I think there's something that goes on there, and that's another reason that these deer kind of pick up on some of that stuff, and like why your deer numbers, sightings go down. But up here, like I said, you don't have to really worry about that as much. So you just pick the days that you think he's going to be on his feet earlier or later, depending on if you're morning or afternoon hunting, which that can be barometric pressure, moon phase, temperature changes, all these different things.
So John, like the way that we've been hunting the last few years, I feel like we've kind of switched up to, we're starting to go after terrain in areas where we think that there's going to be bigger bucks or big animals. John is not a trail camera guy, so everything is based on scouting or whatever. And then, if you've listened to any of the podcasts, you've heard, John's story where he had this really nice buck, like picture perfect, do everything right. Came back from his one of the hunts where he was up north or whatever, went in and he was going to kill this deer. He went in there so excited. Do you think like the way that we're hunting now, and it has to be that way for Jason, like a little bit, is like, my question is more about like persistence of like saying, I feel like now a lot of the spots where I go in there, I feel like I have a great chance of like seeing a good animal or seeing nothing. And like, I'm fine with seeing nothing because it's the risk reward thing. I mean, how do you feel about that, John, based on like where you're hunting and how you're hunting nowadays?
Yeah, I feel the same way. I mean, yeah, that was a whole different ball game on that one. I got back and everything was like the the perfect wind, the same, same scenario. And then I don't see the buck, no sign of him, anything. And I look out and there's a rifle stand right in his bedding area. So, but yeah, I feel, I mean, I've always kind of felt that way. Like, I mean, like I don't need to just go out and kill something. Like the last few years I've been trying, last year my son didn't hunt because he was on a different kind of hunt, but I was like more focused on just trying to get him on some deer and stuff. And then, so like this year I had opportunity to go up to the UP and I knew there were some decent bucks, and that was a private land thing. And yeah, the risk reward thing, definitely, I mean, I feel I don't mind going out and not seeing anything if I know that there's a, opportunity to see a decent buck or get a shot at one.
But well, I just bring it up because like with Jason talking about trying to mentor people, and I'm thinking of like from our listeners' perspective of like a guy that's coming up, because in your situation, Jason, it sounds like, it would be a lot easier to find somebody with some private land or some, go to a higher deer density area or get close to some ag or something. But so I'm just trying to think of like the mentality of like trying to instill that into a new hunter or someone, from over here that's used to hunting a little small private piece where they did see a bunch of deer and then it just went down and down and down and they were trying their bait piles and all this stuff, to going out and venturing onto public land, trying to target bigger class animals.
But so, well, that's the thing. Like, are you talking about like just jumping from like maybe shooting one deer all the way into, shooting mature bucks? Because that's a big jump.
Yeah. I mean, you're dealing with two different classes of animals.
It's almost like you got to go back to Uncle Frank saying you got to get a few under your belt before you start.
Yeah, I'm just thinking, but I'm trying to wrap my head around like mentoring new hunters or bringing people into that scenario the first time, or the idea of hiking those hills and setting up, and
it sounds to me like that's not your entry level hunter. I mean,
yeah. So then when you say that you're mentoring these guys, are they guys that are just striking into that terrain for the first time, or are they new hunters?
Most of them live here and new hunters. So like what I'm telling you, how I hunt is completely different of what I would explain to somebody that it's new here. So if they're new to hunting this type of area and they're just wanting to kill a deer, so a good time to do that is either during the rut, like my explanation earlier was for killing mature bucks. So, which a mature buck is completely different, what John was saying, than like just killing a deer or, a young buck, because, animals and whitetails, in my opinion, they have, especially whitetail bucks, they have different personalities, and the older bucks that, in my opinion, that become mature are a little bit more, they're a little more standoffish, like even when they were born, they were just a little bit, they didn't want to be around the group as much. And I think that has a good reason of why they get to be older deer. The ones that are social, the bucks that are social and hang out with all the does, those the ones that get whacked earlier. And so if you really want to kill a deer, your best bet is to hunt early season around feed trees, like up here or in any big woods environments. That's going to be like mass trees. It's going to be the best place to kill them. So, and they're going to come out, younger bucks, does, and things are going to come out earlier, and stay out later than your mature animals are going to. So, I'm going to tell people to use those types of areas that, sit up around, use woodsmanship and find trees that they're using. Cause, when you're talking about a monster tract of mountain timber, there's a lot of oak trees in there, right? So you got to like spend some time and find the ones they're using, find trails, make sure you have good bedding terrain close to feed, connect the dots there. That's how I try to teach people to kill their first animal. And then, during the rut, get in your main travel corridors, that gets them through the mountains the easiest, and you're going to have the best opportunity to see deer. Um, as long as you've done enough time scouting to find that there's deer in that pocket. Because that's the problem, I guess that, like Dan Infalt and them talk about in big woods, is that deer are pocketed. So you got to spend some time finding out where the deer are pocketed. But once you find them, I'm not going to say it's easy, but, terrain dictates their movement. So if you just want to kill a deer, it's not that hard. If you have everything else kind of dialed. But I do get a lot of people ask me that haven't been hunting long how to start killing mature deer. And to John's point, I guess you were talking about Uncle Frank. You got to put some notches in the belt before you really want to start, trying to kill a mature animal. Because you think about something that's lived that long, he's had a lot of things try to get him. So like he's pretty keen, and so like especially bow hunters, and I try to explain this to guys all the time. It's like, yeah, it sounds cool to kill mature animals and have these, kill a bigger deer and show horns and blah, blah, blah. But you gotta earn your stripes. It's like martial arts. You gotta learn how to draw on an animal, and especially an animal that's more of an adolescent that's not as knowledgeable, before you really can get good and be able to actually draw and execute a shot on a mature animal. Is that, I'm sure you guys have noticed the difference between that.
Oh, absolutely. That's like, I think we've even said, it's like, you don't want to get your first opportunity at a deer and it's this monster buck, because you're going to really screw it up then. I mean,
exactly.
Most of the people are going to, like, this is the first, well, this happened to me last year with my elk.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, it was like, here, my first ever, I got the drawback on this, and it's a nice 6x6 bullet, 33 yards, and I completely blew it,
yeah,
just Forrest Gumped it. I mean, just, man. And so, but that's how it happens with elk hunting. You go out there for 2 weeks and, whatever. But if you're going into the hunt, whitetail woods around your house or whatever, get some time under your belt, get some animals under your belt, and then you can't just expect to go out and kill a booner.
No,
100.
some people do though.
But yeah, I mean, it happens. It happens. Yeah. But you can't expect it to be the norm, or
No.
So.
No, and that's the thing. Like, if you look at it, and the weapon of choice varies too. Like, like if you have an animal in the big woods, let's use whitetails for an example. If you're 100 yards with a rifle, you don't have to be that stealthy and calm in your movements as you do with a compound at 35 yards. But then, when you start bringing that down to like stick bow range where you're trying to get them in 10, 20, 25 tops, like, that all these things get a little bit more complicated.
I can tell you it's really tough to get all the way to full draw on a turkey at 5 steps with a longbow.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah, man. Jason is one of the first people I sent my videos to when I shot at that turkey, and he's like, "You didn't even get the full draw."
Yeah, I know, man. Target panic is a booger, but like the key to all that, in my opinion, and like John, you're talking about the elk. I've been elk hunting for, let's see, I think 4 seasons, and I haven't killed one yet, but I've had opportunities every year. I had a great opportunity on a 300 inch or so, 5x5. And like, I messed it up because he was in a hole with a branch, and like I was focused on the branch, which is so weird. But you know how it happens. You have a shot opportunity, and if you're really not that calm and you see one obstacle, you're going to focus on the obstacle. But the way to really get beyond that is if you work your shot cycle so much that when the opportunity presents itself, the cycle is just so repetitive, and I think that's even more key with the stick bow, like having all your different sequences for your anchor points, come down. Like for me with a stick bow, it's like, I use 2 points of anchor, middle finger in my mouth and the feather slightly touching my nose tip. That's the 2 things that I always make sure and check before I release an arrow.
Yeah, and so not only is Jason hunting in a low deer density area in crazy mountain terrain, hunting only, trophy class or age class bucks, he's also doing it with a stick bow. So, I mean,
Well, mostly, I mean, but I will whack a young deer with a rifle in a heartbeat.
I,
I like, I take out my aggression. I mean, it's not aggression, um, when I get in the woods with a rifle, I'm always like walking and stalking, and I'm usually scouting for other areas, and I just get really pumped just to shoot something sometimes, with the rifle. It's still, the rifles are fun.
yeah, I mean, John's running over to grab another beer right now, so I'm gonna pose this question to him here in a second. But I mean, so John for me he's always saying like it's got to be a bow or nothing. We have a bow hunting podcast, and I feel like John needs to talk to his therapist after hearing something like that, where it's like you can hunt with a stick bow and then go out with a gun. Like,
No, so my point of that is like I grew up gun hunting and bow hunting, and
Yeah.
it took me years to kill my first deer with my bow, but my second year of gun hunting. So up here in Michigan, you can start bow hunting when you're 12, and then you can start gun hunting when you're 14. Well, my first year of gun hunting, we went to the UP and the weather was terrible. I came back and I only seen like 2 deer in the woods. The next year, here I'm 15 years old. It was just like a dumb luck thing. It was a snow day actually at school, and my dad and I were supposed to go out hunt behind our house. He's like, "Nah, it's snowing too much. You just go ahead." I went out. It snowed so much. I got out in these white pines. I couldn't even tell where I was at. I mean, I'm behind my house,
Yeah.
and I'm like, I thought I was by where my tree stand where I bow hunted. I sit down, and I'm literally, it gets daylight, and a deer comes running through. It's a 6-point, and I'm like, I pull up the gun, put him in a crosshair, shoot him, and he's dead. I was like, nice 6-point. The next year, I go up and I go on a hunting trip with my uncles to my dad's old spot, and I'm supposed to go sit in this blind. Ends up there's a guy in it already, so I'm like freaked out. I'm like, there's like 8 of us getting dropped off on this old 2-track. I end up like just walking straight away from the blind with the guy in it, like with the tree behind me, like making sure I don't get shot by that dude, and end up seeing like this opening in front of me. I go out to it. There's a little deer in it. When it gets daylight, it's like a 4-point. I'm like, I'm going to shoot this thing. And then all of a sudden, literally, I mean, no bullshit, 5 bucks come coming down this draw and stop like right in the shooting lane. And I just pull the gun up, put the first one in the crosshairs, boom, shoot it. Nice 8-point. I end up getting that thing mounted. The next year I ended up going and I killed, actually a pair of twin 10-points behind our house. And my dad had been trying to kill him with his bow all season, and I didn't get to bow hunt that much that year. And ended up going out with my girlfriend at the time. Like I had hockey that night. And I'm like, hey, you want to go hunt real quick? So we went and we sat underneath my dad's tree stand, or his tree, and the buck come out, and I turned around and seen it. I like freaking started freaking out. And my girlfriend laughed at me. Like she's, cracked up, and it spooked the deer. And I turned around, it ran out behind us. I got out on my knees, turned around and looked, there it was. I shot, killed it. And so that was, a dandy 10-point, got that mounted. And after that I was like, man, I killed 3 deer with 3 shot, and it was like, there was no skill involved. And after that, I was just like, I ended up the next year, I chased this buck the whole season with my bow, all behind my dad's house. End up hunting it during gun season with my bow, even because I'm like, I'm not gun hunting anymore. I want to kill a deer, with my bow. But that's how I ended up, getting into it. It's like I love chasing the deer, and yeah, if I wanted to go out and get some meat, I don't have a problem going out, like Adam. But I give Adam shit about like, oh, We have a bow hunting podcast, dude. What the hell? You're going to go out now and just, and it's like cheating, dude. You know?
Yeah.
I could see if you go out and you filled your tags with your bow or whatever, and then it's just, but no, I got to give them shit for it. It's like,
no, I understand where you're coming from with that, but I think there is this point though, that especially for some new hunters, that there's this stigma around archery hunting that people think that's the only way you're supposed to be able to do it. And like, I think like for some people that if they really want to stay in it, and especially in some areas that are lower deer density, to really improve their woodsmanship, you know, woodsmanship takes time, right?
Yeah.
But some of these folks, they want a quicker success. So like a rifle's a good place to start. You know, like my son, I started him with a rifle. And he's been shooting a bow since he was a little kid. But like, there is a stigma sometimes, you know, and it happens with antler size too, especially amongst the influencing community, is like, you only can kill a mature buck, or you only can kill, you know, something with a bow to really be accepted. And these people feel this way, right? You know, which I don't think that's the case. I think we all should be on a journey that's makes it fun. I mean, even though I do have an art that I like. It's sounds so weird and sissy to say art, but like when I chase animals with my stick bow, it's usually I want to kill mature animals with the bow. But then when I put the gun in, it's like, well, I'm filling the freezer and I'm going back in this, you know, new area of public. And if I see something legal, I'm going to shoot it, just, you know, put some meat in the freezer, you know? And I think everybody should have their own choice, you know, right to do it. And I don't think one's easier than the others in some areas, you know what I mean? Like, if I go to Mississippi on a private land, yeah, I could, you know, there's areas down here you could whack, or Alabama, you know, where deer densities are really high. You could whack 3 or 4 deer one day from a big, you know, what's those big box blinds called?
The big redneck.
Yeah, the redneck blinds. Yeah. I can sit up there and watch YouTube and, you know, drink beer and smack a bunch of deer out of that thing. But, you know, like, but hey, if you have fun doing that, that's cool too.
Right. Yeah. That's, you know, I'm on the same page. I same thing. Get some under your belt. Like if that's what, and if you go out for years and you don't have any success, then you're going to end up losing it. But if you go out and you end up getting one with your rifle, then it's a stepping stone. So I agree with that too. I just like to give shit.
I do have, yeah, you definitely should get a lot of shit to Adam. But there's certain animals, like I don't think I would ever shoot a elk with a rifle, if that makes sense. Like there's certain animals that I think I would only want to shoot with a bow. And I have zero interest, like a mule deer. I really don't want to shoot a mule deer with a rifle. Like I only want to kill a mule deer with a bow. But I've killed so many whitetails over the years, like, and you get enough tags, like whacking one with a rifle here and there to fill the freezer doesn't, you know, it's not really a conquest for me. You know what I mean?
Right.
Does that make sense? But like hunting these other animals, I don't get a chance to hunt. Like I'm not so interested in just notching a tag and putting an elk on the wall just with any weapon. Like I really want to do it the way I want to do it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I'm absolutely with you on that one.
All right, so that's perfect because it's absolutely perfect. And I'm going to ask you this, and I really do respect your opinion. Like I said, Jason and I talk, you know, here and there. But so this year I'm going on an elk hunt with my dad and some family friends, and they go out to this outfitter, and that's not really my jam, you know, but it's going to be a spike camp rifle elk hunt. And I'm like, well, I'm going to bring my bow, and I'm more excited to go out and hunt with my dad and elk hunt. My dad's been out there twice now and shot 2 elk in collectively probably 45 minutes on stand, just because of that's the way that it is. And it's public land. It's not like they have a big outfitter deal, but this is going to be a spike camp on on public land. But like I'm real conflicted about like my excitement level for it, because it's like I'm trying to wrap my head around, or at least come around to the idea that it's okay to do this and I should embrace the opportunity, because I'm going to be in a situation where, I've never been before, in a sense of like I'm going to be in a place where there's probably a higher likelihood of elk than me. Just like John and I, we didn't get a chance to go out to Idaho and scout, so we were going off of past history from guys we were talking to in a map, and that was it. So now these guys are going to say, well, there's elk, this is what they do, etc. So I've got to like embrace the idea that, I'm going to have an opportunity here, that there's going to be a lot more elk probably than I'm used to being in the area. So like, what do you think about that? Like, it's a rifle hunt. It's like, I really want to shoot one with a bow. I mean, it's just.
Well, I mean, personally, I've kind of opened my mind up a little bit over the years of. Also, one thing that I always like to hunt by myself, unless I was going out west, and I would only hunt with like one of my buddies. But like, I think, like the hunting camp camaraderie thing is one thing. And if you're going to do something with like your dad, that's, obviously he's older than you, and, he maybe is not as hardcore and, just want to get it done. If you can go do that, like it's still going to be an experience. I mean, I don't know how many times you've been out west, but if you're an East Coast person or a Midwest person, going out west is always, somewhat of a venture, especially if you're getting packed in a spike camp on horseback, if that's how they're doing it. That's going to be an adventure in itself. And then also like most of these DIY type of spike camps like that, from my understanding, I've never done one, but I've, looked into them, is you're still left out there alone, and you still have to pretty much get your animal back to camp. So like, I don't know, like I've packed out elk before, like no matter what, like packing elk out's a chore, and butchering an elk is a chore. So like, I think you will still get that experience, and it's all based on the experience that you're wanting to get, and you get to spend time with your dad, and that'd be awesome.
Yeah, and at first I started giving him shit, but I'm like, you know what? I lost my dad last year, and I would give anything. I never did get to go like out west hunting with him. He went out there years. I mean, I think it was before I was even born, and killed like monster mule deer and stuff like that. And he always, matter of fact, like right before he passed away, he was telling me all about the spot, because we were going elk hunting, and he's like, yeah, if, you go down here, and I mean, he was super sharp yet, but yeah, so I told Adam, like, you know what, I can't give you shit, because I would do it in a second if my dad was still around, whether it's a rifle or not, you get that opportunity, you got to do it. So.
Oh yeah. I mean, it's kind of like putting the ego to the side a little bit. You know what I mean? Like, my father doesn't really he's never big game hunted. My grandfather did, and that was always a goal for us when I was a kid. My grandfather always wanted to go elk hunting. We always talked about it. And I remember the first year I got to go, my grandfather's passed years ago, but I was sitting there thinking about like how awesome it would have been to go on my first elk hunt with him, you know what I mean? Or to even take him up there. So yeah, I mean, you kind of just have to categorize these trips, and, kind of step back and look at them for what they are, in my opinion.
Now, if it wasn't your dad, if you were the one, like, if Adam was the one, like, setting up this outfitter and going out rifle hunting, then I would definitely give him some shit. Cause like,
yeah.
I'm
not looking for an outfitted hunt, for myself. Like, I could afford to do it. Then, like, I could have killed an elk first year. I could, 4,500 for a 300 or 6,500 for a 340 with a rifle. I could have paid to do that. But
right.
I wouldn't be happy looking at the animal on my wall if I went that way. But that's just me, but if that's I mean, there's people that go high fence hunt and kill them in Ohio, and they're happy with that. So if that what floats their boat, that's cool.
Yeah, and it's kind of like what we talked about before we got on here is like that's not, and I think that's maybe the main my main hang up is that like that's not really like kind of like what we aspire to do, so I think that's where I kind of struggle with it, but you're right, yeah, it is going to be horseback in, and then we're just left to our own devices. And then, from what I understand is all of that. And so I've not packed out an elk yet. I've not been there. So there's going to be an opportunity, certainly to have a lot of experiences. It just happens to be a rifle hunt. So it's like, I'm excited for all of the experience except, for the like you gotta pay for it. I mean,
yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, you gotta pay for it no matter what, right? I mean, if somebody asked me like, if I could explain like what makes on a hunt, like let's say a Western hunt, like what would make me the happiest of like feeling, being fulfilled, it would be like, on a 12-day hunt, day 11, I'm worn out as shit and I'm peeing blood and I'm packing out an animal, like, because I've really felt like I've completely put in everything I had to make it successful. Right. And that is how I want to have my experiences. I want them to come hard, but there's some people that don't. They just want to go out and smash something and get it done, and that makes them happy.
Well,
that's like my partner last year.
Yeah. Well, I got a question for you on that hunting alone thing. Like, cause you're like, yeah, that whole, camp and camaraderie thing. Like this year, this past year for Michigan and for me, I mean, I shot a great deer. I was like, it was circumstances. I was like, yeah, it was, I felt like, oh, it was, I just went to a spot and just killed this deer. I didn't have any history with it. It wasn't, it wasn't my dream hunt, like on exactly what you're saying. Like I wasn't like peeing blood at the end of the experience. Like it was just kind of happenstance, and I'm grateful for it. But Frank and Ernie were going out of town. They were packing up to go. Maybe they were headed out elk hunting. I don't remember what they were going camping or something. I don't remember where they were going.
They were going camping because I had just got back.
Yeah, and so I called John, and he came out there, and we high-fived and whatever. But like I shoot this deer, and I'm just like by myself, and I was like, well, that was kind of anticlimactic because you don't have anybody to celebrate with, and like and I like being there for like the recovery of other people's animals and for that experience. So what's the draw to that hunting alone type experience?
I mean, I think it's probably, I mean, I grew up an only child, and a lot of things I've done by myself. And, I don't know, man, like I think, and I live a life where I'm, in a business environment, and I deal with people so much that I want to get away and do things by myself. And then I want to like relish in that accomplishment by myself too. You know what I mean? Does that make sense? Like, and I mean, yeah, I get stoked when I have been hunting with other people and we become successful together, but I feel like I'm the most happy, like if I do it by myself and like everything comes together. And you just get to sit there and savor it by yourself, and you do everything by yourself. So, it's kind of like, it feels like more of accomplishment to myself than, if I have two people helping me pack the animal out, it's not the same as like me doing it by myself, like it's a marathon, not a sprint type scenario, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
How do you feel about that, John? 'Cause John and I have way different personalities, so I don't know like how that.
So I love hunting by myself. Like when I'm like, because I can do my own thing, and it's like if I want to go over here, whatever. And that's the way I like to work even too. Like, I just got
Yeah.
wire in the house, and it's like the homeowner wanted to help me. I'll come help you, and it's like, no, I just want to I do it a certain way, and I
Yeah.
like to just if I need to step back and think about stuff, I don't want someone sitting over my shoulder like, what are you doing that for? What's this? And that same thing comes to hunting sometimes. Now, like, when we went out west and stuff, that's different. Obviously we're not going to go out. I mean, I did that last year. I went up and I took off, and I took off up into the Bridgers, and I mean, it was kind of humbling actually. I mean, you realize just how small you are when you're out there by yourself, and
Oh yeah.
and the shit that can happen to you. I mean, but it's, I don't know. I do like when I'm bow hunting out here by myself, like when I last year up in the UP and everything. Not that I don't like running ZZ Top patterns through the through the marsh and shit tangles and stuff, but no, I like hunting by myself too.
Yeah. I mean, but it's also, like I've warmed up to it a lot over the last couple of years, and certain hunts, like it's fun to have some people around, especially like from a motivation perspective, because when you're by yourself, like your own self can be the biggest demon of like trying to drop your motivation. Whereas like if you're coming back to camp every night and you got somebody else to communicate with, like you can bounce ideas off each other, or kind of like, embrace the suck together, to a degree that's really, that's fun. But and not everybody can hunt by themselves. That's another thing. And like, like I have a goal. I would love to go on extended Alaskan hunts by myself one day. And, but you have to work up to these things. Like the most time I've ever spent by myself has been 8 days. And that was doing like fast pack, like, backpacking, ultra running type stuff. I mean, I've done like 5 day hunts by myself, not talking to anybody in camp and stuff. And it's interesting. Like it's weird. Like we're so connected as humans these days with all these devices and stuff, that you don't realize like how dependent you are on communication until you get to a point where you're in a remote area where you don't have communication. You can't talk to anybody. It's kind of a weird scenario. And a lot of people romanticize about some of these guys that go hunt, like for instance, in Alaska for like 20 and 30 days by themselves. And like, but you don't realize like mentally, like how taxing that is, or like, being alone in the woods, at night, and especially like in bear country by yourself, can be very unnerving. And you have to work up to that kind of stuff as well,
Well, I heard Aaron Snyder talking on a podcast, and he was talking kind of like on these like influencer type people, or like the people that want to do that sort of stuff. And he said, if you really want to know like how mentally tough you are, he's like, go on a 7 or 8 day like solo backcountry hunt. And he's like, by day 5, you'll be thinking about ex-girlfriends you had when you were a sophomore in high school and the things you should have said. Like, he's like, you get so deep in your mind on like all of this stuff. Like, I can't imagine like what that whole thing is, but for I don't know, somebody like me, I guess, like I like hunting for the camaraderie portion of it. It's not about the killing, or I mean, right now at some level I am like sort of on this trip, like where I want to like prove something to myself, that I am learning and that I am getting better, and that I can like figure these things out on myself, or on my own, or that I can trust my gut and make these things work. But I guess I don't need to be all by myself to do that, if that makes sense.
Yeah. No, you don't always have to be by any means, but the thing is, I think for most people is, if you want to be successful in any goal, you really can't make it all about the kill, because like if you have a time frame of, like say an extended hunt, like 14 days or whatever, you just got to think about the time and enjoy enjoy the ride. And then if the kill comes, like that's like icing on the cake. Because if you put the kill first, like most of these people are going to be so frustrated. If you're doing something extended, and even this even goes like even for hunting partners, if you get so wound up in the kill, you're gonna get frustrated and not put up in 100%. Whereas if you just make it about the experience, you're gonna have fun, and you just keep working towards your goal, and you can be successful. Um, with less frustration.
Yeah, I think that's hard, and I think in today's day and age, to some degree, is
No, yeah,
it's been told to me by somebody here in our hunting circle that hunting is a jealous man's sport, and like I just have never understood that. I mean, I understand how people feel that way and how you have the antler envy, right? Like, oh man, that's so good. Why can't I shoot something like that or whatever? But for me, I'm just as happy to see John shoot something, or God, if we could just get Frank to shoot something, that'd be awesome. But it doesn't ultimately. My hunting journey isn't against John or against you or against Frank. It's against the animal and the ability and my own ability and myself. So if I keep only putting myself in a position to kill 4 points or whatever, at some point I'm going to be sick of killing 4 points, and then I'll have to like look inside myself and say, what do I have to do differently? Not why does he always get to kill him and I don't? I mean, it's not a him problem. It's a me problem. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, dude, I mean, it's like we can't just use this for hunting. I mean, this is more like psychological, but men have the worst egos. You don't see women like this may sound chauvinist or whatever, but like they don't get into their hobbies and be extremely envious. Let's say cooking. A lot of ladies like to cook. One lady doesn't get extremely envious over somebody else's like pot pie being better than theirs. You know what I mean? But men, it doesn't matter what they're in. They have an ego that wants to be better than the next man. I mean, it's essentially like anthropology, right? Like we're hunter gatherers, and there is this like war competitive nature that bravo or whatever that comes with men. It doesn't matter. Like any hobby I've ever been in my life, there's always this same pecking order of one dude wanting to outdo the other. You know what I mean? So I wouldn't say it's just hunting with having like the envy. It's it's anything. I mean, there's a great book called Ego's Enemy by I think his name's Ryan Holiday or something like that. That's a really good book that talks about the ego, and you really have to we have to put it in check every day. I mean, it bites at all of us, right?
Sure. But like, so I guess, like same level, kind of shifting gears. You were talking about like ultra running, and you've done some like competitive cycling and stuff like that. Like on that level, I always think about hunting kind of like in the same vein as I think about running, is that there's always going to be someone faster, or there's always going to be someone that kills a bigger deer. And I think the bigger deer thing comes with money. Like there's always going to be someone who's, going to have more money. So they can go and buy a bigger deer. They can pay somebody to find them a bigger deer. They can do that. So I'm not in a competition with anybody like on that level. And I think like I feel the same way about the way that I run, is that I can only try and be faster than I was yesterday, or, where I'm at right now. I mean, I know I ran my best 5K when I got out of the Marines and I was running 6-minute miles. So I know that my personal best, I'm probably never ever going to reach that again. So I have to kind of reset my goals to kind of like where I'm at in life. So that, I mean, I don't know. I think it's all me against me.
Well, yeah. I mean, you have to make it about, you against yourself. I mean, like, a lot of things, there's a lot of things that can benefit you, depending on hobby. Like money can benefit you. If you don't have money, time can benefit you. And if you don't have time, experience can benefit you. If you want to be uber successful, you can combine all three of those, right? But all those three things are like really what can make you successful in a lot of different adventures, or adventure, or the one thing, like as far as fitness comes and like running and things like that, you can't buy your way into success in running or cycling or rock climbing and things like that, or combat sports. You can't buy your way to the podium of, fighting somebody. It either has come from, both time and experience, right? And same thing with hunting. I mean, yeah, you can pay somebody to fly up on top of a mountain and kill a doll sheep, right? If you want to, but the best way to do it, that's more pure, is hiking your way up the mountain, shooting it, bringing it back down.
Yeah, for sure. And like, I think that's why, I don't know, we don't have a problem showcasing our failures in that way, because we're not trying to manipulate anybody or be like, yeah, we're going to go do this and this is what you can expect from us. Like, you can pretty much expect for us to fail. So when we do have successes, we can all celebrate together, in that camaraderie type deal.
Any true person that's truly successful, and no matter what it is, they all fail. It's just getting back up and doing it again. Putting one foot in front of the other. I mean, geez, I miss a lot of deer over the years. I'm getting where I miss less, but I missed a really good buck this year in Ohio, and hey, I didn't let it beat me up, and I didn't get stressed out because I didn't get to post a picture on Instagram of a grip and grin with my mustache and all that stuff, like, but I looked at what I did wrong and soaked it up for what it was, and then I killed one a month and a half later. You know what I mean? Like, you can't let it get you down. You have to take it in for what it is.
I was really disappointed. I got my trad bow secondhand, and it didn't come with a mustache or a Stormy Chrome or something. Like, what the heck, man?
Yeah. Did it have a Snyder grip?
It actually has Aaron Snyder's signature on it, just so you know.
Oh, geez. You're guaranteed to shoot like 45 yards.
Oh, man. So, Jason, you also, it turns out, have like this hunting company that's coming out with like all of these exciting products. Where are you at with all of these secret project products that, the industry just pumps out as soon as possible, as quickly as possible to get in the hands of people?
Well, I'm never where I want to be as far as like in development. I know you always like to give me crap, but I'm extremely optimistic all the time and think things should happen quicker than they should. But like, good things don't come quick. We just spent over an hour talking about that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so that's kind of the same way with our products. Like, I have, we have some new products coming out. Obviously we have our climbing sticks, which, most people that know who we are, Timber Ninja Outdoors, know that we have carbon fiber climbing sticks and also aluminum version of that. But we have always had other products in the pipeline. We've been working on a tree stand since we really started talking about coming to market with Timber Ninja Outdoors. Like, the tree stand was always part of it. And it's changed so much over the last couple of years, but, we have a carbon fiber tree stand that's coming out. Should be out July at the latest, maybe even late June. I mean, our goal is, like, we plan on going to that trade show in Alabama. What's it called? The World Whitetail Expo or something like that. I'm talking. Y'all heard of that one?
I've heard of it. I'm not like overly familiar on the dates or anything.
Yeah, I believe it's in July, like early July. So our goal is to definitely have it on showcase by then, if not sooner. I mean, they're telling me now it's like June to get all the final. I mean, we have different levels of it, at the shop, but like getting it all dialed into the finished product. Like I said, we're not trying to rush stuff to market to, make some money real quick and hopefully get somebody else's stand sales. We want
Mhm.
people to get their own stuff. But and then we have a saddle coming out this year, which should be finished up. It actually should have been finished up May 1st, but it's hasn't been ready to go to market yet. It's just been a crazy year with supply chain. Like lack of workers has been one of the biggest issues that we've ran into. Is like we have facilities that we work with, secondary suppliers that have had issues just getting staff. Like their normal business is picked up, but they're not being able to get workers back in. So like that's caused a few slowdowns for us, and so that's one of the big reasons for our saddle line's not out yet. But it'll be out, this summer about the same time, like I said, June, July at the latest. And then we have a saddle platform coming out too. And that mainly has just been us continue to make little tweaks to it. That it really has nothing to do with the supplier. We just keep making little micro adjustments.
And so I had asked you before about the saddle off air, and I don't really want any like groundbreaking anything, but I had asked you about like where it's going to be made and the materials and stuff like that, because I think that's important, to a lot of the consumers.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be made 100% in America, just like everything else we do. Like everything we make is made in the U.S. Majority of the products, I mean, the components and everything come from the U.S. I mean, obviously there's sometimes like screws and stuff that we can't get from here, but the saddle is going to be completely made in the U.S. It's also going to be made to OSHA standards. Like I think I was talking to you about that, and it'll be drop tested based on fall protection standards, since there's really not quote unquote a saddle standard yet, but we're going to have it drop tested to OSHA standards before we release it.
Awesome. Well, I mean, I appreciate talking to you any day, but I like to do it when we can record it too, because it's always fun to let other people be a fly on the wall for these types of things, and to get John talking about himself a little bit here and there too is fun for the listener.
He's really good at that. Yeah, he should be an influencer. He peacocks a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's over there. I mean, he's got his full strut turkey headdress on right now. So
yeah,
I mean,
I figured he'd have that and like a sleeveless shirt.
Yeah. That's John's normal Sunday night attire. He actually forgot we had a podcast today, and he was just wearing that. So
right. Yeah.
I mean, I don't know how many personal followers he has on social media, but I think once you get like 1,000, you have to start wearing like sleeveless shirts and like start taking growth hormone or something. So,
well, John, a lot of the pictures on John's deal is fishing and that, so he usually does have a sleeveless shirt on. I think maybe he's ahead of the curve.
Yeah,
the dad bod.
But that's the way to roll. That's how you get the true followers. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
So, yeah, I think that's kind of all we got for tonight.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me on. It was fun.
Yeah, no problem. I always enjoy it.